Hi everyone, we are going to start with Target B today, and we are going to be on page 13. And I do think you'll really enjoy Target B because it is a lot of routine stuff. So if you can do it one time with the correct steps, I think you'll be just fine for the rest of them. But for Target B, we're going to start slow with going over a few things that you have learned before. Target B altogether goes over normal distributions, and we have a few things we need to do before we are ready to talk about normal distributions. So hold on to this thought right here, but we will work on those later. We are going to take a trip down memory lane and talk about the mean, median, and mode, and then something new that you may not have heard of, which is standard deviation. But just a verbal explanation, the mean is the average. So you've probably heard the word average definitely before. It's the average value of a population. It is represented by this symbol that we pronounce mu, but I'll usually just call it the mean. And so the mean or the average is kind of like the norm. It's what you would expect to happen. So if I was talking about the average age of sophomores in high school, the average age of sophomores in high school, let's say it is 16 years old. That means that normally if you are a sophomore in high school, you are going to be or are already 16 years old. That's the normal thing that happens. Now there's things that go, there's certain cases where you would be above the mean. So maybe someone whose parents held them back when they were younger, maybe they are turning 17 their sophomore year. Or you could be below the average. Maybe you're super, super smart and you skipped a couple grades and now you are a 14-year-old sophomore in high school. So there's ways around it, but that's the average is the norm. With average comes standard deviation. Standard deviation, that is the standard value that a population varies. So the standard deviation is a number, and we will talk a lot more about standard deviation in the next few days to come. But the standard deviation is usually a number. So say in our example, the standard deviation is equal to 2. That means, in my example, let's say that the average age of sophomores in high school is 16 years old with a standard deviation of 2. That means if I am 1 standard deviation above the mean, I am 2 years above average because my standard deviation is 2. So if I am 1 standard deviation above the mean, I would be a sophomore that is 18 years old because that's 2 years above the average. If I am 1 standard deviation below the average, I would be 2 years below the average, which would be a 14-year-old sophomore in high school. This one is a little bit tricky. It needs a lot of explanation, and that's what we're going to do the next few days for sure. For standard deviation, there is a long way and a shortcut. If I had more time, we would dive into that long way, but the shortcut will work every time. It'll work on the SAT and all that stuff, and I'll show you that when we get there. But in summary, we're going to be working with these things: the mean, which is the average, the median. You've probably learned about the median number before, and that's the middle number, but you want to write yourself a note that before you find the median, the number in the middle, you are going to make sure that your numbers are in order from least to greatest. So first, numbers have to be in order. Have to be in order. And we're going to do examples, but first you want to make sure your numbers are in order. And then mode means the number that appears most. So they both have that hard O sound. So mode and most are very similar words. It's the number that occurs most often. And then my skewed data. We don't talk too much about skewed data, but skewed data would be my data being steered in a certain direction. And we'll talk more about that later. Today, we are just going to continue to keep practicing with mean, median, mode, and standard deviation, and we're going to calculate them. And so we're going to do an example on the bottom of page 13. And I'm going to start this example in another video so I have all the time.